We're back again with even more Paul Václavic. Hopefully you're not sick of him yet, but he just has so much good content. And today we're referencing a lighter read. If you're not into his really dense, abstract, esoteric stuff like pragmatics, then you might prefer this one. It's a very short read. You could finish it in an afternoon. And it's a kind of tongue-in-cheek run through many of his deeper ideas, but written in this sort of tongue-in-cheek way where, as the title suggests, it's about how to be unhappy, basically. It's a guide on how to be unhappy. So if you follow these steps, you're basically guaranteed to be miserable. So if you want to be miserable, follow along. So let me share the excerpt and then we'll have a chat. So he writes, "Under a street lamp there stands a drunk who searches and searches. A policeman comes along, asks him, what is he looking for? And the man answers, my keys. Now they both search. After a while, the policeman wants to know whether the man is sure that he lost his key here. And the latter answers, no, not here, back there, but there it is much too dark. Do you find this absurd? If so, then you too are looking in the wrong place. For the whole point is that such a search will yield nothing except more of the same. This deceptively simple formula, more of the same, is one of the most effective recipes for disaster that has gradually evolved on our planet. In the course of hundreds or millions of years, it has led to the extinction of entire species. It is a game with the past that was known to our animal ancestors even before the sixth day of creation. Contrary to game number 3, with its attribution of blame to forces beyond one's control, this fourth game consists in the stubborn and unyielding retention of adaptations and solutions that at one time may have been the most successful or even the most possible one, or even the only possible ones. This is bound to become a problem because all situations tend to change over the course of time. Our game number 4 has its starting point here. On the one hand, it is obvious that no organism can react to its environment in a random fashion. That is, in one way today and quite differently tomorrow. The vital necessity and adequate adaptation leads to the emergence of specific patterns of behavior whose purpose, ideally, is successful and painless survival. For reasons that are not yet sufficiently understood, men as well as animals tend to consider these optimal adaptations as final and thus valid forever. This naive assumption blinds us to the fact that these patterns are bound to become more and more anachronistic. It also makes it impossible for us to see that a number of other possible, feasible, and perhaps even better solutions exist, and presumably have always existed. This double blindness has a double effect. First, it makes the chosen solution more and more useless, and the overall situation thus increasingly hopeless. Secondly, this increasing discomfort, coupled with the unshakable belief that there is only this one solution, leaves only one conclusion, that one must do more of the same. And by doing more of the same, one gets more of the same misery. The importance of this mechanism is evident. Even beginners without special training can apply it with ease. Indeed, its use is so widespread that since Freud's time, it has provided a comfortable livelihood for generations of specialists, although they do not call it the more of the same recipe, but prefer the scientific sounding term neurosis. Never mind the name, what matters is the effect, and the effect is guaranteed so long as the student stays with two simple rules. First, there is only one possible, permitted, reasonable, logical solution, and if this solution has not yet produced the desired effect, apply it more forcefully. Secondly, under no circumstances doubt the assumption that there is only one solution. Only its application may be questioned and refined. Okay. This is a funny one. You'll enjoy reading it. All right. So this actually connects back to, unsurprisingly, a previous video I made on another Watzlawick book, the How Real is Real book, where I talked about this experiment involving a horse and how that is an example of an adaptation that once was useful and effective, but then becomes superfluous and a kind of superstition that is then repeated based on the belief that it's still necessary and still produces some useful effect, even though it doesn't anymore. And at some point, perhaps not in that example, but when it comes to human beings and their various adaptations that can be far more elaborate, that these adaptations, if misapplied or repeatedly applied long beyond their usefulness, they can begin to actually create problems. They don't just become benign, they actually become sources of issues. And another concept that this relates to is from another book that I'm sure I'll get to by Paul Watzlawick called Change, where he talks about second and first order change. There's different types of change. And what he's really describing here is an attempt at a first order change, which is a change where the fundamental rules dictating the game don't change. You don't alter them. You're still operating within the same framework of assumptions about the situation. And so the rules are unaltered. And so all you can really do is increase or decrease the severity. As he says, you can sort of just refine the application of the solution, but you're never questioning the assumptions, the rules that govern the kind of actions or solutions you can potentially implement. And if that's the case, there are times when if you're limited by those rules, then you're just stuck playing the same game over and over again. It's just, as he says, more of the same. And in those situations, that's when you need the second order change stuff, which is where you don't just make a refinement, but you actually alter the rules of the game. So that's a more fundamental shift. And we don't need to go into too much detail. I'm sure I will when we talk about that other book. But the more of the same game is an example of where someone's just stuck in this attempt at a first order change, and they convince themselves that, no, this solution is the solution, but I just didn't do it hard enough or more. I need to do it more, or I didn't do it consistently enough, or I didn't do it frequently or intensely, or whatever it is. There's just the implementation was wrong, but the solution is right. And obviously this can take many, many different forms. For example, think of a stereotypical sort of nagging wife. They nag, it doesn't get the desired outcome. And instead of reevaluating whether the method itself is useful, the conclusion is, oh, I just didn't nag enough. He didn't take me seriously enough, perhaps. I need to do it more forcefully. So I just double down. And it still doesn't produce the desired outcome. So I just double down again. Keep going. And obviously this can escalate in all sorts of different ways and create new problems that didn't exist before, as the person that is the target of the nagging adapts their behavior in novel ways potentially. So it's a fascinating phenomenon, and again, the way to free yourself from this infinite game with no end is to reassess if this is indeed the only solution available, and whether you need to be bound by the particular rules governing this game, or if they're potentially modifiable, changeable. Because if they are, maybe then you don't have to be bound by this limited solution that has not worked. Alright, short and sweet, we can leave it there. Another great book, easy read, fun read. By all means, have a look at it for yourself. Thanks.